Pokemon is the most profitable media franchise in the history of the world, revolving around anime, manga, trading cards, children's toys, and even today's topic, video games. And when you've created the most profitable media franchise in the history of the world, it's kind of expected that you'll see a lot of imitators, emulators, or at the very least, games heavily inspired by your franchise, and maybe even the most expected thing of all, unofficial bootlegs and rip-offs trying to make money off of your product. About a year ago, I was gifted this cool Anbernic Game Boy console emulator. It comes preloaded with a variety of games for basically all of the old school 2D consoles and handhelds, especially Game Boy games. In terms of Pokemon, it's got everything from the original Red, Blue, and Yellow all the way up to Fire Red, Leaf Green, and even Pokemon Emerald. It works as intended, and the games on it play amazingly. There's even some official Pokemon spin-off games on there too. I actually completed my first ever playthrough of the Pokemon trading card game for Game Boy Color on it. This isn't a sponsored segment or anything, I am just trying to express how legitimate this little emulator is, and I know there's more out there like it. Anyway, I'm scrolling through all of the Pokemon games that came preloaded on the emulator, and I start to come across some pretty unique ones that I didn't expect. In addition to the Pokemon trading card game as a spin-off, there's also Pokemon Pinball, and even Pokemon Puzzle Challenge for the Game Boy Advance. And if I keep going down here, oh shit, look at this! It's Pokemon Green! Like the original Pokemon Green that was only released in Japan. Let me just boot it up real quick and... Okay, well, I had heard the sprites were different in Pokemon Green compared to what we got over here in North America, so let's just keep going and look at the gameplay. Yeah, this isn't Pokemon Green. No problem, though. I'll just find a different game. Oh, hey! Pokemon 2000? I didn't know that they made a game based on the movie. Alright, well, hell, let's check that out. Okay, so the title screen features Charmeleon, who wasn't in Pokemon the movie 2000. But the gameplay... My point here is that Pokemon bootlegs are obviously bootlegs. It becomes pretty apparent very early on that you are not playing a legitimate Pokemon game or anything licensed by the Pokemon Company. And man, there are a lot of bootlegs. Way more than I could even fit in my little Game Boy emulator thing here. So you're probably looking at the gameplay of these monstrosities and thinking, wow, every bootleg out there must just be terrible all the way around. And you would be 100% correct in thinking that, right? Well... what if I told you there was a bootleg made specifically for one of the most populated countries in the entire world? And what if I told you that this bootleg wasn't just trying to take your money without making a decent game in exchange, but that they were actually trying their best to replicate an already all-time classic Pokemon game? And what if I told you that instead of making this bootleg on or for a handheld device with limited hardware, they were making it for an entire gaming console that you plug into your TV and play? Would you give the bootleg a try then? Still no? Well, that's okay, because I played this one, so you don't have to. Welcome, everybody, to the Chinese bootleg NES edition of Pokemon Yellow. Now, before we dive into the gameplay and find out just how awful this bootleg is going to be, let's first figure out why the hell it even exists. To be completely honest, I don't know, it's some bullshit to do with the fall of the Soviet Union or something after World War II, and it made Japan uninvite China to their birthday party, so they weren't selling any consoles or Game Boy systems or even games over there at all, so China said, fuck you, dude, I'll make my own birthday party. And then we started seeing game developers and publishers from Russia and China work together to essentially pirate, emulate, and recreate these systems and games as best that they could so they could sell them to people in their own countries who otherwise wouldn't have access to anything of the sort, and it kind of went from there. So here we are, finally getting our hands on some NES bootleg Pokemon Yellow gameplay. It was thankfully translated to English a while back by username Lugia2009, and they are a legend for doing it, but yeah, here it is. When we open the game up, it's the classic opening we all know and love, mostly. We don't actually name our character because we're already automatically named Ash, so I guess we're just going to be off on our journey, just as we remember it. Right? Well, you start off, and the first thing you really notice is that overall, everything looks pretty good. I'm not sure at this point what the gameplay has in store for us, but out of the gate, you can at least tell that it's not like that knockoff Pokemon Green. That wasn't Pokemon Green at all. It was a completely different amount of gameplay with a Clefable there, and you were kind of playing Super Mario Bros., but you could shoot, and it was way worse. This looks and feels in the beginning like Pokemon Yellow. Maybe this game's got a little promise to it. Hell, even just walking around the house, the graphics look solid. Sure, there's a couple things that don't make the most sense. But hey, your mom has her own bedroom, and that's better than a lot of Pokemon games have managed in the past. I step outside into Pallet Town, and the first thing you're going to notice is that the overlay of the town is a little bit different. There's grass here that don't have any Pokemon in them. But other than that, understanding this is NES graphics and not on a Game Boy, and not everything's going to be in exactly the same place it was before, it looks all right. We try to head out, and of course, Professor Oak stops us, and then he runs me face first into the wall of the lab here. When we step in, Gary's waiting on us, just like normal. We go to pick our starter. He doesn't let us, just like normal. And then we battle, kind of just like normal. We have our first official battle against our rival, who is named Gary, by the way. You don't get to pick his name either. I guess that makes sense. You're forced Pikachu. They pick up Eevee, just like classic Pokemon Yellow. And the first thing you'll notice when you get into the battle itself is that these are Gen 2 sprites. The Pokemon even have their own little animations that like they did in Pokemon Crystal. And we've even got the Gen 2 experience bar at the bottom. So when I defeat the rival, I see how much experience Pikachu gained. That battle wasn't as jank as I thought it was going to be, and it played pretty smooth. In fact, that battle wasn't really jank at all. I've never actually had high hopes for a bootleg before, but this is a pretty solid start just going off of the first real battle. So the beginning is pretty standard. You take off out of Pallet Town, you head up through the first route, and then you have to go get Oak's parcel from the Mart guy. When you go get the parcel from Mart guy, you can actually buy Pokeballs right then and there. You don't have to deliver the parcel to Oak before you can go back to the Mart and then start buying Pokeballs. Carrying on, business as usual Pokemon Yellow, we deliver the parcel, we get ourselves a Pokedex, and then we start off on our official journey. Before we go any further, I have to say, this game has really impressed me at this point. The gameplay is smooth, it plays like Gen 2, it looks like Gen 2. The graphics are better because you're on an NES, and this was 2005 when this game came out, so at this point, we already had Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, and they had a long time to work with the Gen 2 sprites and graphics in order to make this work. The game feels smooth, and it looks better, and it plays ultimately better than the original Yellow did. Technically, they had 8 extra years to work on this game, but it's still a bootleg, and I still didn't expect this much from it. After doing a couple wild battles, I decided I'm going to head over to the side route and grab a Mankey for the Brock fight later, since I know Pikachu isn't going to be a matchup for Brock and his Onix. And another thing that catches me off guard is that as soon as you step over in the direction of this route, your rival is waiting and challenges you right away before you can even look for the Mankey that I'm here for. But it's fine, and I was able to keep my cool, and I was able to beat the rival, no problems, really. I'd already caught a couple Pokemon, so he wasn't that big of an issue. Anyway, one Mankey later, and we're off to Viridian Forest. And it's at this point when I'm battling the bug catchers around Viridian Forest that I'm starting to wonder to myself, how far does this bootleg actually go? I booted it up, and I saw Pallet Town, and I could pick my starter, and that was all cool, but does this game actually go the distance? Can I play a full copy of Pokemon Yellow? So normally in Pokemon Red, Blue, or Yellow, as you get to the end of the Viridian Forest, you come up against one bug catcher who has one particularly strong Weedle. He's like level 9 or something. It's just stronger than anything you've encountered before, but it's still a Weedle, and it's still a relatively easy fight. Well, in this game, things are a little bit different, including the difficulty, because what you come up against instead is a bug catcher that has more than one Pokemon, and his last Pokemon is only level 8, but it is a full-grown-ass Butterfree. Almost a boss fight-like level spike this early on in the game, and I genuinely about had my team wipe here. Thankfully, I'm not doing a Nuzlocke, or I would have been in a lot of trouble. And it's at this point that I approach Pura City that I have to start pointing something out, because while this game is a blast, and the gameplay is smooth, and graphically it is a lot more than I expected, and the game feels pretty full, as someone who's been playing Pokemon since I was a wee lad, and I started on Gen 1, and I've grown up with it, there is just something about this version of Pokemon Yellow that, while very graphically impressive and while hitting all the right spots and while the gameplay is pretty well translated and all of that, it just feels off. Something in this game just feels very, very off. And I think it's a culmination of a few things. For starters, let's have the music set the tone for you. This is the music that you hear on the very first route. And I showed you guys a bit of the start screen earlier, and it looks fine, and to be honest, it sounds completely fine, unless you let it play out for a little while. I want you to keep in mind this next thing you're about to see and hear, I did not edit in any way, shape, or form. This is just how it is. Here's another example. I caught that Mankey earlier specifically for the Brock gym because I didn't want to have too tough of a time with it, knowing that Pikachu naturally is an electric type and won't do well against the rock or ground. But when I caught this Mankey back at level 3 or 4, he didn't have any attacking moves. And now here we are at level 7, and he still has no attacking moves. And here we are now at level 8, and he still has no attacking moves. Normally that's not the end of the world, but when you have the increased difficulty like this, it messes with things a little bit. That's not the only thing that's a little bit off. Later off in Mount Moon, I noticed that if you get confused, it actually counts as a status. One of my Pokemon got confused and I went to go switch them out so that way I could switch them back in to get rid of the confusion, and they kept it. Pokemon keep confusion as if it were sleep or paralysis or any of the other statuses. You switch out with a Pokemon, they stay confused, you switch back in, they're still confused. You end the battle, you start a new one, the Pokemon is still confused. And another twist for you, statuses can now be overwritten by other statuses. In Pokemon Yellow, if you have a Pokemon that's paralyzed and then it gets hit with sleep powder, it can be put to sleep. It won't be paralyzed anymore, but now it's not paralyzed, it's sleeping. It can also be used as a strategy vice versa. If you put a Pokemon to sleep and you know they're on their 3rd or 4th turn and about to wake up, you could just preemptively paralyze them so now they have a permanent status condition. Like I said, the game actually runs great for the most part, but being a Pokemon fan my whole life, seeing these Gen 2 graphics over a Gen 1 game with some of these old quirks and perks just not running the same as they used to, again, it all just feels a little bit off. Back at the start of the game is you can't really interact with a lot of the items. You can't interact with the Pokedexes on Professor Oak's desk like normal, so it can explain them to you. You can't interact with your computer to pull out a potion in the beginning. In fact, you can't even stand in front of your computer. And you can't talk to the statues in front of the gym where it reads off the names of people who have beaten that gym already. Another goofy thing they have going on here that I'm sure you've seen already is that the routes are just off. Like, I know they're trying to mirror Pokemon, but they could have done an exact copy, or at least their version of an exact copy, and they just don't. The routes and towns are all kind of like this, where you just sort of feel like you're in this parallel universe, or this mirrorverse, or some kind of Twilight Zone version of what you played before. Coupled with the music, the gyms and towns being out of place, and the routes just not looking exactly the same as they did before, again, you just get that eerie, creepy feeling. Also, the one drawback to the Gen 2 looking battle system is that they kept everything the same from Gen 2, which is awesome. Like I mentioned before, the experience bar, the names, the placement of the Pokemon, the actual sprites themselves, they all look great. But they decided to change exactly one thing from Gen 2 in these battles: the attack animations. And the attack animations are... Well, there's something. I would argue the original attack animations are better, especially Gen 2's. But you can't complain too much, and it's not like all of them look bad. They're just a little bit missized here and there, maybe a bit small, or maybe a little less impactful, or maybe they don't properly represent what the move does. But the attack animations are there, and they are new, and they are something. I don't know. On the flip side, not all of the odd or off quirks are bad. For example, like I said earlier, that status thing you can use to your advantage. Something else that's pretty different is wild Pokemon can actually drop random TMs and items. Yeah, it's weird. You can get the TM Thunder in Viridian Forest if a Caterpie manages to randomly drop it. I picked up a couple moves myself that wound up helping me out along my way. So when you're grinding wild Pokemon, you're not only grinding for experience, you're also grinding for a very slim chance to get a TM, a potion, a super potion, an antidote, anything like that. Also, I'm sure I'm a little bit late on mentioning this, and I'm sure a lot of you have pointed it out or noticed it already, but Pikachu doesn't follow you in this game. It's just another one of those things where it feels weird. But enough about the oddities and quirks. They're not that distracting once you get used to them. You catch on to them pretty quick, and then when it came to the audio and the weird-sounding music, I actually ended up turning it off and just playing my own in the background. It's Pokemon. I don't really need the game audio to get through this one. And as I mentioned before, all the other stuff is relatively negligible in exchange for what you're getting, and what you're getting is a pretty solid early-gen Pokemon game. So it's time for Brock finally. I've trained my Mankey up to level 9 before he finally learned Double Kick, and I'm ready to take on that Geodude and Onix. So let's go face Brock like the future champion we are, and...
What's up, fuckers?
He has 4 Pokemon. Why does Brock have 4 Pokemon? He's only ever had Geodude and Onix here. Well, he leads with the classic Geodude, and even though he's level 10, my Mankey has the type advantage and takes him down pretty easy with just a couple double kicks. And now, expecting the Onix to come out, we actually get... Zubat! Oh shit, Brock's Zubat, like the anime. Wait, that's cool. Well, my Pikachu gets rid of Zubat, having the type advantage there, though we're carrying a Confusion, and would you look at this? Now he's sending out Vulpix. I guess that's on par. He had his Zubat already. So yeah, you fight Brock's Vulpix, and then it's back out into Onix, which Mankey can handle no problems. And just like that, we've got the Boulder Badge. And not only did we get the Boulder Badge, we didn't get that completely useless TM Bide, we actually got the almost just as completely useless TM Harden. But hey, at least they realized Bide was a pretty ass move. So we head over to Mount Moon through the very normal route to Mount Moon that we all remember. It's always looked exactly like this. We face Jigglypuff Girl, as one does, and we make our way into Mount Moon. Now, I mentioned the routes and towns being a little different and a little off before, but Mount Moon is the first time that I actually felt totally fucking lost. Nothing is the same in this place, and they've actually made it a maze. You can just go to places that have dead ends. It's not a big loop where you can collect items and whatnot like before. It's just a maze. You pick a random tunnel, you walk down it. Hopefully it takes you somewhere nice. If not, you turn around and try the next tunnel. I was happy to see a lot of changes and upgrades they made in this game. They got the upgraded sprites. They let you buy from the mart right away instead of after you deliver Oak's parcel. But one thing that they did not add was buying repels before Mount Moon. So we are unfortunately stuck in here at the will of the random battle encounter system. So while it took me longer than I'd like to admit to get through Mount Moon, I did come out safely on the other side. I did pick my fossil, though that selection process was a little weird. And as I go to leave, I get reminded that while this is a bootleg, it is a bootleg of Pokemon Yellow, and I am met with Jesse and James, and Meowth, even though you can't see him. Luckily for me, I had plenty of Pokemon and plenty of health left to get through this fight, so it wasn't too bad, and let's head over to Cerulean, see what's up with Misty. So I get into town, and one of the first things I notice is that the policeman who's usually blocking your exit to the city isn't there. You can just head on through and go straight to Vermilion if you want to. I'm not going to do that, but it's neat that it's an option. Also, another weird thing when I went to the bike shop is that I think the woman who normally gives you Bulbasaur is here, and she doesn't give you Bulbasaur anymore. But if memory serves me right, that is her dialogue box from Yellow. Why they took her and made her a secretary in the bicycle office and no longer a Pokemon caretaker, even though they left her with the Pokemon caretaker text box, I'll never know, but it is what it is. So after grinding up a little bit, we're about ready for the second rival fight. But before we get there, I actually have to show something off that I just thought was adorable. Look at this pause menu. I know I've gushed about the graphics a lot already, but look at this pause menu. They put a lot of effort and art into this, and it just looks really nice. And even the save menu has a little charging Pikachu. It's just adorable. Anyway, rival fight number 3. I'm starting to notice that even though I've been grinding pretty consistently, maybe a little bit more consistently than I would in regular Pokemon Yellow, I'm still pretty underleveled, all things considered. Maybe it's because I have a full team of 6, but I'm not splitting the experience between all of them. I really just have a couple heavy hitters, and I'm managing to use my type advantages to keep winning me these battles, even though I'm at a disadvantage. Despite being underleveled and having to take down a pretty scary level 15 Rattata, we do manage to go ahead and knock out rival fight number 2 with almost everyone intact, and it's time for Nugget Bridge. Nugget Bridge is very same old, though the placement of where the trainers are is kind of goofy to me, but whatever, I didn't make the bootleg. And after beating every member of Nugget Bridge, we get the usual spiel from that Rocket gang leader who hangs out at the end of it, but he's still just as much of a baby back bitch as always, and even though I tell him yes repeatedly, I would love to join Team Rocket, we battle anyway. And at this point, I was kind of tired of fighting random route trainers, and while the rival battle was a nice breakup for it, I was just ready for another big challenge, so I decided to go take on Misty directly while my Pikachu was still kind of a lower level, even though we had the type advantage. Misty was running her usual team of Staryu and Starmie with none of her other Pokemon in sight, but I think that still lines up with how Ash battled her in the anime, so it works. And between my starter Pikachu and an Oddish I caught earlier, she really was a pushover, and taking her on at this stage of the game wasn't much of a challenge at all. I head back north of Nugget Bridge and... oh shit, that's right, you do get given a Charmander in Pokemon Yellow, and they keep it up here. I was really concerned after I saw what I'm pretty sure is still Bulbasaur Girl back at the cycling station, but Charmander guy is still here all the same, and we get him and keep it moving. We walk into Free Bill like usual, and while he is looking a little bit different these days, the exchange largely plays out the same. And it's at this point that I am again having to remind myself that this is a bootleg. I have to remind myself this is a bootleg because the gameplay is good, everything is there, everything is where it's supposed to be. I am just playing Pokemon Yellow, but on the NES. Yeah, the music's weird. Yeah, I can't interact with everything exactly the same. And yeah, Pikachu's not following behind me, but make no mistake, this is Pokemon Yellow. But enough glazing. I try to talk to Bulbasaur Girl in the bike shop again just to see if she's Bulbasaur Girl and if she'll give me one because I would like a Bulbasaur to replace Oddish, but it's still a no-go. So I'm going to go ahead and check out of here and battle the Rocket Grunt who's hanging out outside the house. The Rocket Grunt's just as much of a pushover as ever, but hey, I get the TM dig for this. And speaking of, I think it's time I've shown off some of the TMs I've picked up. You remember when I mentioned earlier, you get random TM drops throughout the game. In addition to Brock giving me Harden and Misty giving me Bubble Beam, which is pretty damn good, I've also picked up Iron Defense and Razor Leaf randomly off the ground. It's part of the reason I wanted Bulbasaur so bad. And I also think it's worth noting they have something similar to Generation 2's bag division system, so it's not like Gen 1 where all your items are crammed into one pouch. You actually have the whole bag like you do from Gen 2 onwards. Just another nice quality of life feature that I forgot to mention earlier. So I make my way down to Vermilion City, where the SS Anne and inevitably Surge is waiting for us, but before then I do what I always do. I stop in at the official Pokemon fan club. And I stop in at the official Pokemon fan club so that way I can listen to the official Pokemon fan club president yap about nothing for a little while, so that way he'll give me a bike voucher. That way I can take that bike voucher back to Bike Guy to get a bicycle. But wouldn't you know it, first of all, there's not as many people in here, and secondly, when you talk to all of them, including the club president, he yaps for a little while, but there's no bike voucher. And sure, that's a little bit weird, no bicycle, but in my head, you know, no bicycle, how am I supposed to get on Cycling Road? Surely they have to give me a bicycle somewhere later down the line, because if I can't get on Cycling Road, there's really no point in it existing. And then I checked my mini-map, and it turns out... Hey! This looks neat and all, but where the fuck is Cycling Road? Hey, this is definitely the map I remember. Everything tracks, except it looks like a nuclear bomb blew up Cycling Road. There's no point in Cycling Road existing, so it doesn't. Now, I don't know if they didn't want to program a working bicycle in the game, or if they used it as a way to cut corners, so that way they didn't have to make an entire route or a bicycle system, or if the technology wasn't there on the NES, which I'm sure that's not true. But yeah, there's just no Cycling Road. Poof, gone. No bicycles, no bicycle road, no boatload of trainers to grind up experience on once you get there. None of it. It's just been deleted. Never existed. Cycling Road, never heard of her. Your Cycling Road is in another castle. Sorry about that. I take time to grind up a little bit more on those trainers to the right of Vermilion City, and then I even take some extra time to grind up in Diglett Cave as well. And man, I am grinding a lot more than normal in these games, but we'll keep it moving. Making my way through the very normal SS Anne, just kidding, it's a maze, kind of similar to the way Mount Moon was. Picking up any items I find along the way, and looking for that fourth rival fight. And we get there fully prepared for another boss battle, but between the level 20 Diglett I just caught in Diglett Cave, my Oddish who I've been working with, and my Pikachu, still my starter and lead Pokemon. His strongest Pokemon is an Eevee who's level 20, and hey, that's only one level higher than me. The level gap was a lot worse before, so I must have grinded up a lot, and it seems to be working. So now I've done all the work to get through the SSN, and I finally have the HM cut, which should allow me to cut through the one tree branch blocking the only path to the gym so I can walk up and...
What?
There's no tree branch. It would have taken a lot of trees. This area is wide open. I could have walked straight up to the gym. I just could have gone in before twirling a cane. I didn't have to look at the SSN. Okay, that's not entirely true. They did put a guy standing in front of the door before, but why would they get rid of the tree thing? Do you even use HMs in this game? They got rid of bicycles. They might not even need HMs anymore. Who knows? So anyway, we're inside Surge's gym, and despite all the natural quality of life upgrades we got, the improved graphics, the better bag system, picking up TMs randomly on the ground, which is lovely, the experience bar, all of it, despite all of the nice, lovely quality of life upgrades we've gotten and all the better things that this gen has to offer, they still managed to absolutely fucking nail how annoying this gym puzzle is. And it already didn't work properly in Gen 1. But I persevere, we get through it, and it's time to fight Surge. So I still have that Diglett I caught back in Diglett Cave, and he should be a monster here. He was already level 20, which was the highest level Pokemon Gary had to offer, and Gary is supposed to be literally the fight right before this one. So I'm sure their level differential won't be too far apart, and oh my god! Like I just said, the last boss Pokemon I fought was Rival Battle 4 against Gary. Gary's best Pokemon was a level 20 Eevee. Eevee is a first Evo Pokemon, and his max level was 20. One boss fight later, and it's not like there was a huge gap between here, I walked out of the SSN, walked into the gym, battled 3 prerequisite trainers before Surge, and I am now battling Surge, and the level gap has jumped from level 20, which all my Pokemon were just under anyway, to level 30! This is a level 30 Raichu, my god! After taking out Surge's other Pokemon, Diglett falls right away. But luckily, Surge's Raichu goes for a Tail Whip on the first turn, and my Oddish gets a very clutch Poison Powder off. And at this point, this means I can just sacrifice every Pokemon I have while Raichu slowly dies of poison damage, finishing him off with my Pikachu at the very end.
Wow!
I did it! My level 20 Pikachu beat Lieutenant Surge's level 30 Raichu. It was actually a lot like the anime, and I felt it. I'm gonna be annoying about it one more time. This game is good. This game is fun. The graphics are better. The move pools are better. Hell, I forgot to say it earlier, they even updated types. Dark type and Steel type exist in this game. It coming out in 2005 was an advantage to itself. It doesn't feel like a bootleg at all. It almost feels like an officially licensed Pokemon game properly ported to the NES around that time period. You could have told me the Pokemon Company Nintendo Game Freak wanted Pokemon Yellow to release on the NES in 2001 in Japan, and this was the result, and I would believe you. As far as being Pokemon Yellow goes, the game is really good, and dare I say it might even be the definitive way to play the game. It's amazing, and there aren't really big downsides to it. Right? Whew. Oh boy, here we go. Okay, so I've been gushing about this game a lot, and that's because this game does do a lot right. I haven't been lying to you guys about those things, but man, there is one major thing that I have been ignoring, okay? This game is amazing, this game is very fun, and this game would be, in my opinion, the definitive way to play Pokemon Yellow. If it wasn't for the one thing that makes the game almost entirely unplayable. Some of you Poke nerds out there who have been paying attention to the gameplay so far may have picked up on this already, but there is one major flaw that I just absolutely cannot get past with this bootleg. An otherwise very, very well done bootleg. Ladies and gentlemen, the thing keeping this game from being a definitive way to play through Pokemon Yellow is none other than the experience gain you get per battle. Oh my god, this game was a slog. If you go back through the video and look over my team as it forms over time, you'll notice that as we get closer to Misty, I actually stopped training up certain Pokemon. I had my team of 6 in the beginning, took me getting Mankey to level 9 to even learn a fighting type move to attack Brock with, but slowly, the more I played this thing, the more I realized that training up 6 Pokemon just wasn't going to do it, even if I spent extra hours grinding along the way. No, seriously, my stream that I did of this game for the footage that you're watching now is 4 hours in total. I was probably playing the game for 3 hours and 30 minutes of that. So out of 3.5 hours, I bet you I was grinding for over an hour before Lieutenant Surge. And that's on fast forward. That's with a speed up option. And I was still underleveled for basically every single fight I did, especially the last one against Surge. Let's go back and watch the ending to that fight real quick. My Pikachu, who is sharing experience with no one because all of my other Pokemon who had battled up to this point had fainted, is level 20. And it's a Pikachu. It's a first Evo in this game. My Pikachu is up against a level 30 Raichu. A 10 level gap at the low level early stage of the game, and Raichu is an evolved Pokemon with way more HP. I don't know if their system operates off of health the way original Pokemon did, or if it operates off level, or how much experience you have already. I don't know what the slider looks like, but I know it is bad, because this is what it looks like when my Pikachu gets full single experience for defeating a Raichu 10 levels its senior early on in the game. Okay, I am a level 20 Pikachu who just killed a level 30 Raichu. Let's see what our experience looks like. Almost a quarter of a level for an evolved Pokemon 10 levels above us. It's the same Mon, but evolved, and it's 10 levels above us. Almost a quarter of one level. Something else you could see in that clip, the gym leaders and boss fights in this game also spam revives like it's Pokemon Emerald all over again. See if we get Nidoran Male a level. You fucking bitch. The fucker healed. I try not to let that bother me too much, and it's also beside the point because, again, the experience gain is truly atrocious. I legitimately had to put the game down after seeing my level growth after Lieutenant Surge. I couldn't do it anymore. It's Pokemon Yellow. I've played it 100 times, and I was having a lot of fun playing it this way too, but it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it to see the rest of the game. You are better off in this game, as I learned when I caught Diglett, catching Pokemon and just assuming that they don't gain any experience at all. You can train up your starter. I've managed to keep Pikachu at a somewhat decent level, though he's 10 levels too low on the last gym leader badge that I did. But still, if you pick 1, maybe 2 Pokemon to train up, they can kind of hang if you stop to grind every other route. But aside from that, you're going to catch a Pokemon like Diglett, you're going to use it when you need him, like against Lieutenant Surge, and then you are probably going to drop him and you're going to catch a better Pokemon of the same typing when you get to, I don't know, Rock Tunnel, because the Pokemon will probably be 5 or 10 levels higher there, and it's way quicker to do that than it is to try to grind Diglett up 5 or 10 levels. It's just a task to get your Pokemon to grow at all. I should be showing you a lot of examples on screen of how little experience gain you get, but let me hammer this home because this isn't even the worst part. You want to know what the worst part about the experience gain of this is? I mentioned this at the beginning of the video, but a person by the name of Lugia2009 actually managed to translate this game from Chinese to English. It's the only reason I can play it now and understand what's happening. But translating isn't the only thing that they did. They tweaked with a couple things here and there. One of which was kind of straightening out the music in some areas where the music had gotten repetitive. I guess the soundtrack for this game is actually really small, and they reused music a lot. Lugia2009 managed to sprinkle in some soundtracks from other games to fill it out a little bit. A good move for sure. But you know what the description says another feature that they tweaked was? Better experience gain. No, when you go to download the English patch for this, it tells you Lugia2009 made the experience gain that we're playing now better than the original. And this is still far and away the worst EXP gain I've ever seen in any video game ever. With the English buff. I feel like I'm losing my mind here. How could this game be playtested so much and so well that it is a very functioning and proper version of Pokemon Yellow, but then seemingly intentionally made to be out to be made the worst grind I've ever seen? This is disgusting. I can't even imagine what the original Chinese version is like. I don't even want to look at that thing. The thought of it makes me want to throw up. There you have it. Is this the best Pokemon bootleg out there? Honestly, maybe. It might be. It's pretty damn good, especially when you compare it to other bootlegs. For sure, 100%. They did a good job emulating this game. But is this the best way to play Pokemon Yellow? Oh, man. They were close. They were so goddamn close. They were right there. They were right there. How did they fuck it up this bad? I'll never know. Anyway, I have a genuine request for anyone versed in coding or anybody with the proper thirst for knowledge out there. If you know how to code this game, if you know how to tweak the code in this game at all, if you could tell me how to get into this game and just make it to where my experience is multiplied exponentially, I will probably go back and finish this. I would actually love to go back and finish this game if the EXP grind isn't ridiculous. And how ridiculous is it? Would you tell me how to do this number? I don't think doubling the EXP gain would fix it. I don't even think tripling the EXP gain you get in this game would fix it. It is god-awful. If you tell me how to tweak this number, I am going to go in and I'm going to make the EXP gain 4 or 5 times as much as it currently is, and then I think it will feel like it's at a very good spot and still won't feel overpowered. It is disgusting. But yeah, that's it. Half the reason I made this video was so that I could give out my cry for help. Somebody, please, for the love of God, tell me how to increase the EXP gain in this game. I would love to know. Other than that, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed bootleg NES Pokemon Yellow. I'm Thundershot. I'm out. Sub if you're new around here. Peace late. Catch y'all next time. Be easy.